Thanks for coming. I know there's a lot of people going, oh my gosh, what happened here? So surviving the last night's party. I'm glad you guys are here. My name's Kyle Abisher. I'm the Tennessee SE, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi SE. So if you're a customer in those areas and I haven't gotten to say hello to you guys, please feel free to come up to me and introduce yourself, and I'd be glad to help you in any way to improve your experience with our product in your environment. Today I have Richard King with Deloitte and Lee Cooper with HCA. We're going to be talking about migrations. So first of all, I'm going to kind of set the stage of what our product is used for. Typically, I get into customers and they don't know we can migrate. They don't know we have a action called move within our product. It's kind of hidden in the actions of the product line, but we'll walk through that and go through why you use move for migrations, why you would use that function versus a live failover. And then we'll talk about their experiences. These guys have migrated over 5,000 workloads in a short amount of time, so that could present some abilities of your environment in being able to consolidate and condense or move workloads as needed from one location to the other. As we talk about our product, obviously we know you've seen this before. If you've been in any of the sessions, we're going to be focusing in this area because typically we don't really have a session until this year in ZertoCon around migrations, because it has been getting a lot of traction as customers are consolidating, condensing data centers. So here's our framework. Our bread and butter is the continuous data protection architecture versus a snapshot architecture. What does that mean to you? It means that you can rest assured that we're not going to be stunning your VMs as we're replicating them over. That's what typically happens in a snapshot framework. You're going to get a production impact when they're snapshotting and how frequently you snapshot, right? So this is the benefit we give you. Our journal, we're a journal-based framework on the target side, and we leverage that journal to give you the capability to bring up your VMs quickly with low RPO and low RTO. We are a hybrid cloud framework platform strategy for your environment. I consider it the easy glue that allows you to move workloads in and out of these platforms. Gives you the flexibility to migrate into Azure, AWS, and some of these DRaaS offering cloud service providers. So in a migration, this is typically what your enterprise looks like, right? Your application tiers, they're multi-tiered, they're very complex, they have dependencies, and they have to be able to move in a one lump sum to the other side of the house. And so the complexity is, getting these from an RPO perspective all consistent and over to the other side. What we offer in our product is what we call the virtual protection group. It's a consistency group wrapper around the VMs, and what that does is it protects the VMs and replicates the underlying disks to the target side of the house and keeps those disks in a consistent manner. You'll see a concept called the checkpoint that's cast every 5 seconds. What you're getting there is an ability to take like the blue VPG1 at an RPO of 4 seconds, knowing that if those VMs have 20 disks underneath them, all those 20 disks are going to come up at that checkpoint. So this gets away from the legacy mentality of backups that have 24 hours, snapshots that have 4 hours. you got all these VMs in a disparate RPO framework trying to bring up an application. It's almost, you can't scale to that magnitude and when you're bringing those VMs on the target side. We also support vMotion, storage vMotion. Those disks can reside across data stores. Doesn't matter to us, we keep track of that. So here's the checkpoints. This gives you the ability, from a migration standpoint, to kind of do a smoke test. So you can bring those VMs into a VPG, bring them into a test bubble network, so to speak, verify, validate they actually work and they're operating on the target side and still keep production up. And then when you're ready to actually pull the trigger, you have the ability to move those workloads with the move capability. So, good Steve Jobs. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end because once you get there, you can move mountains. You'll notice that I got an iPhone. The simplicity. Steve Jobs was notorious for just nitpicking, hey, I want simple, I want simple. I can reassure you that Zerto wants to simplify that process for you, make it a one-click, two-click button process versus disparate other technologies and disjointed configurations that do not work cohesively. So that being said, we'll walk through what is the migration process. How does it differ from a live failover? Basically, it's very similar, but in the process of automating the move, we'll walk through what that looks like. We still do replication of the replica over to the target. That's still part of the whole process. Then we'll go into continuous data protection mode. So any block changes happening on the production environment are getting sent immediately over to the target. And then once you're kind of deciding, okay, we're ready to migrate, you'll use the move process. What does the move provide you versus the live failover? The automation and workflow of move is basically we automate the shutdown of the production side of the house, we quiesce the last I/O, and we checkpoint it and send it over to the receiving target side and bring up your VM. So you're guaranteed in the move process no data loss. Now, you wouldn't use live failover because live failover is assuming that you have disruption, that the data center is not operable, and so there will be data loss, minimal data loss, maybe 5-10 seconds, but there is. So that's the difference between our move and failover is in the move process, we're guaranteeing that you're not going to lose data because we're automating the shutdown of the primary and sending that last block. So, and then we automate the VMs coming up on the other side, any re-IPing that needs to be done, all that is automated and brought up, and then you're ready to go on the target side. Our product also gives you the capability to do testing before you migrate. Automate those VMs coming up in that whatever network, look at them, verify that you can log in, that everything's operable before you actually pull the trigger. So that's huge and gives you the flexibility and capability. We also have a cross hypervisor, which both of our customers have done Hyper-V back to VMware, and we do the heavy lifting of the VMDK's conversion between those two platforms and bringing them up on the other side for you. So that being said, we're going to go into, these are the certain situations we can solve or certain problems we can solve. If you got a Hyper-V, you're an all Hyper-V shop, we can replicate between those two. VMware to VMware, Hyper-V to VMware, and also going into the cloud and CSPs. We also have Zerto Analytics available in our product, and I'm sure you've seen that during our other sessions. And we build out a, not in this case, I don't think you would ever use the test plan, but that's not applicable. We also, both of our customers have used the REST API to automate and to do that bulk changing and whatnot. So we have we're open REST API interfaces into our product. You can leverage some of the automation tools out there today to call REST API. We also have PowerShell scripts that accommodate your needs online that you can use to do these changes in bulk. So if you're not a fan of clicky on the interface, you can use PowerShell and migrate or automate these processes. So that being said, we're going to kind of talk through what these guys have done in large amount of VMs. We have Deloitte, Richard King from Deloitte. Basically, they're a huge company. Some of the migration drivers, Richard has been, multi-hypervisor, right? Kind of described some of the challenges you guys went in through with choosing Zerto and trying to get out of the situation you guys were in.
Yeah, we basically, we've been through migrations before, so we actually ended up with a multi-hypervisor environment, and we migrated to it. In the past, what we had to do is a file-based replication, because we didn't have anything that could basically make the kernel change from the VM running in VMware to a VM running in another environment. So we would end up building shell machines. We put agents in all of the existing guests. We would use it to migrate the data over. It wasn't very flexible as far as being able to script things. There was a lot of challenges with even after the migration to this other hypervisor, you would go in and have to update all sorts of tools, make sure you had their right kernel drivers, right, make sure you had all their settings in there. And it was a very complex and long, drawn-out process. But it was a decision, that we wanted to do to move forward.
Yeah.
Go a few more years, the complexity of managing a multi-hypervisor environment is wearing down on the team. It's hard to keep up with. You're patching multiple different patch cycles from multiple different vendors. So we decided to make the change to move it all back to one workload. But we didn't want to follow the same process.
Yeah.
So we went out and we were kind of looking at all the pieces that we could use, and we came across Zerto. Yeah. So we really liked the fact that it didn't care what hypervisor you were on. If we wanted to take it to the cloud, we could. So
cool.
Opened up a lot of things.
Like you guys had a huge undertaking, right? You had 5,000 Hyper-V VMs that had to move back into your core environment, and it took a lot of planning, right? Oh yeah. But it was only 2 guys that I know of that was working maybe a little bit more, but and then in actuality 3 months, right?
Yes.
300 VM batches and getting that executed.
Yeah, and this was a mixed workload. It was development machines, it was production machines, it was BCP machines. So it was a very mixed workload. So it was challenging to schedule and work around. But like what we did was we did have a couple guys that were just mainly kind of concentrating on doing all the planning pieces. Yeah. When it came to execution, though, it was really the whole team could run it. But what we did was we planned it in such a way that not everyone on the team had to know the ins and outs of the API and all that. So we went ahead and did all the work up front to put the automation in. We basically made the decision we didn't want to touch the GUI. Yeah. We did the GUI through POC. We did the GUI through playing with it, moving test workloads, doing test live things. But the goal was never to touch the GUI. Yeah. Because we knew that we had to get as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's like a 6x faster than your prior migrations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we would do good to get 50 machines done in a day using file-based, just because there was so much triage after the fact, and we actually hired contractors to actually assist with that. So that was even with bringing on additional resources in people and applying that, and still it was a very much more manual process.
Yeah. Some of the lessons you learned. What did you learn out of this whole process?
A lot about REST API. For me, I'm not a coder. I've done scripting. I've messed around with Power CLI. I've done a little bit of PowerShell as an admin over the years, just kind of getting used to things. But REST API was new to me.
Yeah.
And actually came to ZertoCon in Boston last year and sit in on. I think it's a similar lab is that they have now. It's on the REST API, and actually got to sit down with some of the engineers and talk through scripting scenarios. And one of the things that they pointed me at was Postman. And Postman's a great tool if you're not familiar with REST API, because it gives you a view of how the calls and the commands work. So it's a great troubleshooting tool as you're trying to work through and build your own scripts. To go, and you're getting a visible result. You can actually copy paste out the structure and then put that in your scripts, and that was a big time saver. But yeah, definitely planning that out and learning those tools. That was for me. It was huge. Obviously we did that proof of concept. We walked through and understood the basics of Zerto first. We did our own test migrations. We built test VMs in both environments, and we failed over multiple times, just iteration after iteration, because we wanted to get it down to as smooth as possible. Okay. Because we knew when we got the window to move, we were waiting on the business to say go or not go, that we wanted to get it done as quick as possible.
Great.
And that involved a lot of communication with the business and kind of planning. But the nice thing about it was the outage to the business was so minimal. They were very flexible. We could do all our pre-seeding, all our replication, our batch creation the day before. We communicated out what machines were failing over. We'd give them a window of time when we'd do these batches, and we were doing 150 machines a day at first, and then we scaled that up.
Yep.
And basically, we were constantly replicating new batches and failing over batches at the same time. But it's crucial to also monitor your workload as you do that.
Yeah.
We're not in the GUI, so it's like, well, how are we going to know if something goes wrong? How are we going to know what's going on? We got error checking in the scripts, but we also would leverage, a product like Nagios or something like that to do some external monitoring.
Yep. And
we'd batch load it with the machines that we're going to be moving in the next upcoming batches, and then we would have monitoring. You'd be able to tell what was up, what was down, did the services start, things like that.
Gotcha. Good. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure working with you, and I know we're working on other initiatives around your DR and your capability to move your workloads in that fashion. So we'll discuss, the licensing aspects. I'm sure customers have questions around that, but I'm looking forward to your journey, and it's only getting better. So
thanks.
So we have also with us Lee Cooper. He's an architect for HCA, a small healthcare system here in our downtown or in Nashville. Not just kidding; it's one of the largest ones in the world. So, we've already talked about them, but they've done a lot of work around migrations, data center consolidations, moving disparate different workloads from Hyper-V to VMware, moving out of data centers. So huge amount of work being done within Zerto, within their environment. Lee, we have your migration drivers. Can you kind of expand and give us some feedback on what those drivers were?
Yeah, so we kind of came to Zerto a little bit backwards, I think, actually, of what Richard did. We were looking for a DR, business continuity solution. We had went down the whole SRM path for a long time. Big fiber channel shop, EMC, storage, got really tired of fighting with SRAs, with missing files, with waiting a year up to for the EMC to release an SRA for our VMAX. So started looking at the hypervisor-based replication. We did some of our earliest migrations starting with vSphere Rep when we moved from our Centennial Park office, or right off Centennial, over to the crossings. Started going down the SRM with SRDF. That was way too slow, way too painful, way too many resources tied up between storage engineers and compute engineers trying to help balance each other and make sure what we thought was replicating was actually replicating. Started doing vSphere Rep, and that worked okay. It's not the best tool. You've still got SRM in front of it. It worked, and it was functional. And then we started looking into Zerto. We went down the whole Hyper-V path as well. Sorry, everybody who else did. Looking for a good tool to help us get off of it. I think much like Richard found that, it was a great tool to capture the IOs and just instantaneously allow us to fail over to the VMware side. So some of our divisions, HA started a private cloud. We changed our private cloud initiative about a year or 2 years ago to where we're now trying to bring our hospitals and facilities into our colos and data centers. We've got 4 main locations throughout the U.S. and trying to bring them in for Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Michael. They hit us fairly hard in Florida. So trying to help shore up their server closets, give them some more robust, better uptime and resiliency. So they're actually our biggest driver. We've got 15 different divisions. I think we've migrated about, give or take, 3,000 VMs from Hyper-V. Probably about a third of them maybe, or half of them were on Hyper-V. The rest of them, the divisions are migrating in off of their just native VMware stacks. But really, we're just providing Zerto almost as a service for them to use and to leverage to bring the workloads in. We don't have to touch much of it. Through the scripting and automation, we're able to create some CSV-driven scripts. They just upload files, go into UCS Director, say go, and it pretty much takes care of it for us. But it's worked out really well.
Yeah, and it looks like through some of your data center consolidation, right, over 5,000 workloads moved around and consolidated and shifted it around to redesign and re-architect the way you guys want to do things, right?
Right, easily over 5,000, and many more to go. We'll be over 10,000 probably by the end of next year. And again, most of that's the division workload basis, but we've used it for our primary data center moves as well. We moved from Orlando to Tampa, for instance, and Zerto is key to that. I think most people come to Zerto with the whole thought of, this is my DR solution, and it's kind of strange. I mean, if you have to use Zerto for DR, something has gone really bad wrong. If you don't think about Zerto, I consider it a really good migration solution that also does a pretty good job with disaster recovery. You always want to be ahead of any type of failure if at all possible. It can't always be prevented, right? But you certainly want to go ahead and try. We were very seriously considering during the Hurricane Irma and Michael days, go ahead and proactively failing over. And so, of course, what does that look like? It's a move. It's a migration. It's not a live failover. You don't want to do that live failover unless you absolutely must, because it's basically pulling the power cord out from under the operating system, and it's a hard down. When you can do the migration, it is a much more graceful move.
Yeah, I was talking with one of your cohorts, CTO, and he, I think you guys have a yearly golf fundraising. Was out on the golf course with him, and he was looking at us as like a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
I mean, because he saw so many multiple use cases that he initially didn't think.
Yep.
He was in the DR, resiliency framework, but he was seeing these use cases come out within HCA where you were using our product to, like you say, hurricane. When the hurricane comes into Florida, these guys, it takes them an hour and a half to implement our software and then start replication, and they couldn't do that with some of the technology that they were using in the past. So he was like, I can sleep at night because I know your product can do this capability when hurricane season hits the South. Yeah. Well, thanks for your partnership, Lee. Thanks for your partnership, Rich. I look forward to working with you guys and making our product better. HCA has made our product better. They challenge us to the hilt.
We will find the bugs and we'll let you know about
yeah,
it. There's no doubt.
They're the ones that find bugs in certain products that, even their VMware and all the other vendors are like, oh, HCA. So, and we're not different, right? So it's been a great journey. I love working with you guys. So that is kind of their journey, and now it's open to Q&A for anybody to ask some questions on if you're thinking about this journey, what are the kind of the gotchas? Yeah.
So I heard you mention that you did pre-seeds before your migrations to help speed that up. What sort of tools or scripts or methods or best practices did you use for pre-seed?
Yeah, I probably misspoke. So it wasn't pre-seeding in the terms of Zerto pre-seeding. So we kind of use that term as we were planning out moves ahead of time. We would work with the business, especially on the production VMs. They wanted to. They had a lot of F5 load balancers. They had a very resilient application stack, and always on SQL. But they kind of wanted to plan out in which ways that they would go. So we would break those machines up into separate batches, and then we would stage would be a better word. So I would start staging. I would do the scripting. We would start the replication of those batches, so that we were kind of in a planned. We knew exactly what was going to flow that day. We knew exactly which applications we were going to be impacting that day. But we didn't use any of the preceding of the data because we were all within the same LAN data center.
Yeah.
So we had a very high-speed connectivity between the racks, and we were lucky on that part. Now, if I did need to do it for, going to our DR data center in Atlanta or something like that, then that's when I consider, hey, I've got this big VM, moving that workload down and doing the true pre-seed like Zerto supports.
Yeah, we are capable. If anybody needs that capability of pre-seeding, maybe you don't have the pipe, right? So you can grab a copy of those VMDKs, travel them over to the target data center, land them on the storage, and then use Zerto to pre-seed those.
Tools besides the GUI to assign those pre-seeded disks?
You can script it.
I think it's with
Yes,
6.5
yeah.
that it came up with the REST API.
Yeah,
that you could do
we just came out
pre-seeded.
not too long ago. I don't think it was 6.5 where you can automate the pre-seeding capability through the REST API. Yeah. Yeah.
So is failover test still a viable way to test if you're going to move VPGs, or is it better to just do a test move those VPGs if that's how you're going to migrate those?
Okay, test. You can do failover test just to do a smoke test, right? That's how we would recommend you kind of verify, hey, are the VMs operational? And I'm assuming that when you first started out, you guys did some testing to verify and validate, make sure everything, and then Richard, you moved down the Nagios way because doing that for 300 VMs is probably not practical, right? So he created a mechanism to verify and validate. But yeah, you can use the failover test, move those into a bubble network so the production side doesn't know anything about them, and kind of validate, verify, are they operational? Can I log into them? Is everything look good? And then when you're ready to pull the trigger, you have a checkpoint that's viable. Anybody else? Yeah.
What versions of Zerto are you guys running?
We're on the latest 6.5 update, so we're not yet on 7. So it's in our roadmap to get there. But we did all our migrations on 6.5.
Yeah, we're on the latest 6.5 now as well. The bulk of our migrations were done on 5.5 actually. We're trying to lay the groundwork. I got upgraded finally. It's a little bit more difficult for us because of all the divisions. They own their own virtual centers. They own their own ZVMs, so raising them up as well, that can be a little bit of a pain. But trying to lay the groundwork for 7.0, and we're waiting on update 1, of course.
Yes.
It sounds like you've automated quite a bit of your creation.
Yeah.
Do you do automated VPG creation day to day, or do you just?
Yes.
So how did you figure
experience as much as you think. We've had people create VPs up to 500, up to 100, and no, we don't want those, ideally. You've got to think about it in terms of how much exposure are you willing to have, right? Because there are certain activities that go on with the VM or with a host that different VMs run on that could stun your VPG or cause it to error for one reason or another. So usually the sweet spot for us is somewhere around maybe up to 20 or 30. Up to 50 I don't really sweat about, but it's a little bit of a cause for concern.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not really looking at more application consistency, you're more like just getting into replication.
No, so we do it application-based. HCA, yeah, we've had a long journey with DR. I guess we've been doing it for a little over a dozen years, and the most recent change we've switched to now is we're doing application-specific VLANing with our networks, so that way we have application-based portability. So it really is an application set, but we really do have some applications that span out several VMs wide. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a real concern to us because, a lot of times we don't necessarily know all the VMs that all the applications these VMs might support. There's always those hidden gems that you find that, we had, one VM that turned out to be like a service orchestrator for a whole bunch of applications that people weren't aware of, but it's just something that had evolved over time. Everybody's on their digital transformation and getting to the CMDB, and it's growing pains to get all that information there. So we're not there yet. But what we did was, basically we wanted to be able to get the moves over as quickly as possible. We notified the teams. So the expectation was that we really wanted them to know when they were moving, so that they could be aware, they could be testing, they could give us feedback right away. But we wanted to make sure the VMs were up and healthy, just as they were before they moved. So we had Nagios set up. We added the machines to Nagios. We did it all by scripts. I had a batch. Chris, one of my coworkers over here, would help load those batches in. But they would be in a healthy, monitored state before we start. We would do the migration. You could watch them just fall over in Nagios. It was like, okay, it's planned. So you see that, then they come back up, and you watch for the ones that, oh, look, this one never came back. What happened there? We had issues just on timing. Maybe the IP stack didn't initialize correctly, and you go in the VM, and it had it there. You disable, re-enable the NIC, you got that one machine up. But, it was that was a very low occurrence as far as things like that happening, but it gave us the ability to catch things before our end users were coming back to us going, hey guys, you moved me and I'm down. I've been down for an hour, that kind of thing. So the impact was really low to our customers. We were done, we'd say we're doing it in this 4-hour window, but typically their machine may have been down 10 minutes.
That seems like a good strategy you never know when you're going to hit a glitch of a VNIC not getting plumbed in correctly or whatnot, especially dealing with a large amount of VMs. And,
we knew our pace was aggressive, and we wanted to minimize the risks as much as possible.
Yeah.
We started our migration sometime in late August, and our goal was to be done by the end of the calendar year. And we were well ahead of that because everybody had our firm closed down the last 2 weeks of the year, and everybody got to take off. So it was we didn't impact any of that.
Anybody else?
I'll throw out one other alternate use case, actually,
Okay.
that we've been using migrations for. Who's ever had a vMotion fail on a large or highly transactional VM? Yeah, me too. We will actually use Zerto in lieu of vMotion on occasions to move those large or highly transactional VMs. It's nice because you go ahead and stage it. It is, of course, a downtime, but sometimes it's more appealing to the application owner to say, look, you will be down in this 30-minute window than it is to say, I'm going to kick this off, and it might run literally all day long. I don't know when the thing is actually going to fail over or how reliable it's going to be. Sometimes you're a little bit better off to take the downtime, know exactly when it's going to occur, get it over there real quick because you've already, of course, been replicating the data. You know the bits are there than it is to try to kick off the vMotion and just hope and pray.
Yeah, I have one of your imaging team. They were moving to Nutanix, and they were on the old clusters, and there was one system they didn't know, they didn't have any clue how they were going to move, because we're talking about 14 terabyte SQL databases, 19 terabyte SQL databases. So we put in Zerto, and we moved them from their old cluster into their Nutanix cluster. Bam, up in 10 minutes.
Yep.
They were like ecstatic that they got that moved.
If you can get your customer over the downtime by any stretch possible, it is way more reliable, generally speaking.
Anybody else? Well, guys, thank you.
How do you both deal with non-stop operations, meaning that you have basically applications with no downtime, but yet you have to protect them, and if something happens, you have to have them up and running? How do you deal with that? No data loss, meaning you can't afford any data loss.
So we don't use the quiescing, and actually I don't even know if it's still continued with Zerto for sure or not. They had a quiescing support where you could dump out, and of course you don't want to be quiescing the system all the time. That can be a real pain. We have found Zerto to be almost as good as quiescing. Now it's not clearly, if data's in RAM and it's not flushed down to the disk, you can't capture it in Zerto. But nobody, I think, has that figured out incredibly well, to the best of my understanding. If the data's in RAM, how are you going to catch it one way or another? I consider Zerto to be near active-active. It's not, obviously, but you're getting so granular. I mean, I have seen 2-second RPOs on occasion inside of my Zerto UI. And, usually I'm seeing around 9 seconds, 10 seconds. That's not a lot of opportunity for error. But, to speak to your question directly, though, no. I mean, it's not a hard guarantee. Always on or some other type of clustering service is still about what you would have to do.
Yeah, with us, it's a similar answer. So Tier 1 is handled differently at Deloitte. Deloitte has a standard defined of what Tier 1 is. That's the Tier 1 definition that we give to our customers and our internal business units. Zerto's not that Tier 1 for us in our standard, but we consider it our highest level of Tier 2. So for those applications that we have that are considered at Tier 1, we're still using SAN-based replication. We're still using SQL Always On. They're still in a different sort of treatment to answer that, because a lot of our stuff is contractually liable with what we've guaranteed to our customers. So we're kind of bound by those constrictions. But I will echo what Lee said. We've experienced that this crash consistent migration has been sometimes even better than what we're getting on our Tier 1. So the risk is there. That data loss potential that you're talking about is definitely there. But the experience has been very good. As a matter of fact, our SQL team is using Zerto now in a different way than we thought they would. They have asked us to use it to eliminate always-on SQL clusters. So they're using always-on locally in the data center, but they were stretching always-on to the DR side as well, and that was a very big pain point for them. So they're eliminating that, and they're saying it's good enough for me to be protected by Zerto to DR, and I'm always-on local, and we've actually now started implementing failing over an entire always-on cluster to the DR site. So they can still have their primary read-only copies for reports and things like that. Definitely.
You are correct.
Yep.
Have you guys migrated any workloads into the cloud?
We have not.
We haven't either yet.
definitely
I think we're like everybody else. You know, we want to get on public cloud. We know that's where we ultimately need to go, but it's, especially like healthcare, it's hard. You know, what applications do you really trust to be out there that anybody in theory could get to? We just don't have a good migration case. And actually, some of the more advanced customers that I heard, you know, from the cabs and whatnot this week, I think they're doing very few lift and shifts, and most of it is just net new, you know, builds out in the cloud. Now, I tend to think that's probably more of what we'll do. I can't say we won't do any of it, and certainly we're happy to have Zerto as a tool to help us with those migrations, but no, we haven't done any today.
We've got a very aggressive cloud strategy going. So our CIO is pushing it hard. We're doing a lot of adoption in Google, Amazon, and AWS. We have thousands of machines already out in the cloud, and all of that has been net new to this point. So I've been playing around with the cloud piece and kind of looking at it. I think it's going to come up eventually. I think we may even see DR going that direction first. But right now, I think still the trend is net new there, and then phasing out stuff on-prem. Now, that may change as other initiatives advance within Deloitte, but that's where we are today.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Well, guys, thanks for coming in. Please take some time and give us your feedback. Really would love your feedback. Thanks, Lee, Richard, sharing with our customers and prospects and partners about your experience in migrating data centers. Thanks, guys.